Why, hello. Blair here of Chaos Costumes to actually make a costume, right? I had this grand idea to have a multi-part series where I build something that I can wear. Per episode, you get a piece, right? Let's see how it goes. And bonus round, you get to learn more about Nomad. So without further ado, let's go. If you remember, last time we made this cool bow that's multicolored. But this week, we're going to flesh out the beginning of an armor set. And we're going to start with the Helm. So we'll actually use the sphere, and we'll keep it. But I want to add the skin of my nugget. You can learn how to do this in this video. But with our origin sphere, let's make it big. And drag it around till it covers my face. Then I'll use the move tool. So I want this helm to have a crest in the middle. The best way that I found to do it is pushing it over and then forcing symmetry so that it makes a nice little bevel in the front. I want to go in with the tube tool. I'm just going to change the offset to just 0% and draw a nice little tube. Then I'm going to make it a square profile. I'll toggle symmetry just so I know what I'm doing, but we're actually not going to use that mirror. Then I'll twist it and add a sharp node right in the middle there. What we're working on first is the visor. I'll increase the division just to clean up that geometry. And I'll change the radius so it's more tapered. And I'll turn off the mirror. I want to push this in a little bit with the gizmo. Then I'll flare out this tube because we're going to use the same little trick that we did last time. So I'll turn up the division and then validate it, and then force symmetry with the mirroring option. And that gives me a nice little bevel in the front. And I'm just going to clean up this little funky geometry that happened over here. I'm just doing that with a smooth tool. Now that I've fixed it, I'm going to remesh it with sharp edges enabled. And I'll move it around a little bit just to get it just right. I don't want to mess with it too much because I want to keep this nice and clean. I'm going to go in with the tube tool and draw some more details. And I want to make sure I have snapping enabled. And I'll turn off B-spline to have a little bit more control. Snapping is usually so annoying and never what I want, but today I want it. And once again, I'll mirror it and turn on the profile to be a square. But I want this square to tuck in a little bit, so I'll just change the profile. And I'll turn on the twist on 2 points, just so it hugs the head a little better. With snapping enabled, the more nodes the better. And then I'll turn the snapping off to finish out this shape. And then I want the back to tapered a little bit, so I'll just change the radius. 2 points of control. Now I want to go in and add some more tube details. So since I had the previous tube selected, I didn't have to make the profile again. And since I want it to bevel in the front, I'm just going to do that little trick that we used with the first 2 objects. Right here, I want to make a nice little shelf so that the detail that we're adding has a nice transition and a place to glue. So I'm just going to increase the division of this, get it out of the mirror, and validate it so I can go in and force symmetry with the mirroring option, just so it has a nice bevel in the front. I'm going to fix this egregious geometry with the smooth tool. You can use the move tool real big, kind of fix where I want it to go. And then the origin sphere, I'm going to push around as well. Make those cheekbones pop. Alright, for some reason it didn't record this part, the little thingy bits, and I'm just going to teach you that real quick. It's pretty simple. So, I just added a tube in a straight line, change the profile to a square, got rid of all the extra stuff, add a node in the middle, make it sharp, change the radius, and then pull out the radius and pull in the radius. What you can't do is bend it, so keep it straight with the snapping tool in the grid, and then you can move it around with the gizmo. Just like that. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled programming. Now, I'm going to add a little mohawk piece with the masking tool, and I'm using the select mask in the polygon shape. Now that I'm happy with that shape, I'll validate that, and then clean it up with the brush masking tool. And then I'll just extract this shape, and then realize I had the mask go all the way through. Just unmask that off, and extract a shell at about 5. Now that I have that shape, I don't like the edges, so I'm going to smooth it down a little bit. And then inflate it a smidge, and smooth, and going back and forth. Now we have a cute little detail on top. And now I want to add wings to this helm. So I'm going to use the tube tool once again, and then change the profile to be real narrow. And I'll zoom in even more, just so I get an enhancement of that grid, and then shrink it down even tinier. Now I'll increase the radius, and have it taper towards the head. And increase the radius, and validate it. And then what I'm going to do is just trim off a little corner of it, and then move it around to get the shape that I want. And then I'll go in with the gizmo, and then clone them down to add more blades to these wings, these wing things. Then I can move them so they're touching, so they print kind of nice. And I'll select all of them, and join them together. And then I'll subdivide them a smidge just to smooth out the corners. I'm just going to go in with all the other pieces and smooth them out a bit. So increasing the division on simple shapes, validating them, and then smoothing them globally. Kind of forces a fillet around the edges. I think it's fillet. I don't think it's fillet. I just want to tuck in these wing things behind this transition that we so lovingly made. So I'm going to hide my body and select everything in the middle. I realize that I need to merge mirrors before I start doing that. So I'll join that, then join that mirror, and join the entire helmet, minus the wing things. Then I'll clone that, hide it, and select the wing things. And see what booleaning out the helmet from the wing things does. And it made weird geometry happen. So I'm going to take this copy. I'm just going to voxel remesh it. That usually fixes all problems. Making sure sharp edges are enabled. Then I can boolean out the helmet from the wings. Now it's a lot cleaner. There's this little spot that got tucked in. I'll just trim that off. I can show the helmet again and see what I'm working with. Now that we have the shape of the helmet, I'm going to voxel remesh it and keeping sharp edges at a higher resolution than the part we booleaned out. Save it just in case it crashes. First, I'm going to decimate everything before I do the next step. I'm just going to mask the whole thing and shell it by 2.5, but you actually want it to be negative. So negative 2.5. Make sure shell is enabled and extract it. And it looks exactly the same, but I promise we did something. We're actually going to trim out the bottom. And I use this thing where I have the lasso not validate right away and then switch to the polygon. It saves me a lot of time. And then trim that off by hitting the green circle. And now the bottom of our helmet has been trimmed away. And since we shelled it, it is a hollow version of itself. Some funky geometry going on over here. So I'll just smooth that down. I'm just going to go in with a split And same just turn off auto validate on the lasso, and then it makes a shape that you can push around with the polygon. My goal here is to split this in half so I can fit my head into it. But I want to keep the front half one thing so that the wings can glue to the front half. Now that I'm happy where it's going to split, I'll hit the little green circle or the whole shape, and I'll split it where I drew that shape. Turning on the x-ray, you can see what it did, but I wanted to split a little cleaner on top. So I'm actually going to split it from the front side. And then take that split and mirror it. Take those two halves and join them. And then I'll force symmetry on the front side. And along the back side, I'll just clean this up a little bit using the trim tool. Now that I have the mask halved, I'm going to go in and add some points by which it can connect. So my magnets are 8 millimeters by 2 millimeters. So the radius I chose was 4, because if we did math, we know that radius is half of diameter. And then turn off uniform scale and make it too high. But I'm realizing that my radius is a cone, so let's turn that off to 1 point of control. I'm going to put these magnets approximately where I want them. This shape is just a placeholder, but to make it easier, I'll just rotate it by 90 degrees. So when I add more shapes, I don't have to fight it. And when I solo it, you can see it's 8 millimeters wide, which is great, because that's what I want. And then I'll put it approximately where I want it, so I can start building out a place for the magnets to socket into. I'm making a clone of that magnet because we will need 2 magnets for the helmet to stick together. I'm going to go in and draw a mask with front-facing vertex only toggled. I'm just going to draw in where I want this little shelf to be from the magnet. There's a lot cleaner ways to do this, but this works for my brain. And then I'll extract what we just drew and make it tall enough to hug the magnet. And then extract that shape. And it looks heckin' terrible right now, but I'm just gonna do a smooth operation on it. And inflate it a little bit. And to bevel this out a little bit, I'm just gonna flatten the back end. Just because we don't need this much material for it to work. I'll just smooth that out. I can just clear the mask, see what I'm working with, and join those 2 pieces together. Now I'm going to do the same thing for a second anchor point at the bottom. So I'll take my magnet proxy and put it about where I want it. Do the same thing we did up top. There, we drew a little mask. Extracted that and then smoothed it down. I'll just go in and make the profile of the shape a little less egregious. And now that I'm thinking about it, I could probably just trim it into a little triangle. Then I can flatten these edges a little easier. Then I'll just mirror that shape we just made. Move the mask. Take those 2 things and join them. I'll turn on front-facing vertexes only and smooth out the inside of this mask, just because that geometry is a little crunchy. And making sure we didn't mess anything up on the front. Or the back? The front side of the back? Yeah. I'm gonna make a copy of the magnets and boolean out the magnets. But I didn't think that, oh, I made a little gap between the magnets and it's making a little shelf where that goes. So I gotta fix that. I'll just push what I just made in a little bit. So when it does boolean out, it doesn't make a weird shelf on the inside. And same with this guy. Ooh, that's really bad. Like I said, there's probably a lot better ways to do this, but this is the first solution I picked. Now let's try boolean out the magnet holes. And that is a lot better overall. I'll be tending to that little shelf eminently. So to get rid of that little shelf, I'm actually just going to make one of these magnet cylinders a lot bigger. What I should have done is made the blank 4 millimeters high instead of 2 millimeters high, but we're on a journey. Actually, these guys need to go all the way to the edge. So I'm going to make the cylinders even longer. And I'm going to change the pivot point to the back side so that when I do make it longer, it's only by the side that I want to manipulate. Now I can join those cylinders and boolean out the cutout that I wanted to do in the first place. Now let's do the exact same thing that we did to the back. And what I have is the X-ray view toggled and the lock toggled so that I can see what I'm doing without selecting surrounding shapes. I'll just extract that little piece, smooth it down like we did the other parts, and inflate it a little bit. Just want to make sure it's thoroughly touching the inside. I'll join those two shapes. So I actually want to design a little peg that sockets into everything, just because I reseated the magnets inside of the back side of the helm, and I need to design something that meets it. So I'm just going to take my magnet cylinder and stretch it out, and make it a little bigger. For symmetry on what I just did. I guess the reason why I like Nomad so much is it's like every time I do a project, it's like a little puzzle, and I have to solve it, and you are watching me solve said puzzle. It's actually really nice for my brain, I think. Like, as I'm doing this, love it. Absolutely love doing it. Trying to voice over what I'm doing, absolutely frustrating. I'm just doing the same thing, extracting a little shape, smoothing it down, and inflating it. And I'm just going to use the move tool to flatten it out. And now that I know what I have planned, take this little cylinder, change the pivot, and pull it out. Make it a smidge bigger. And I'll just flatten out the backside of this cylinder. So now that I solved my problem making little pegs, I'll join those pegs, clone those pegs, and boolean them out from the back. Because if they're going to fit together, I need to make it so they fit together. Then now I can take my little magnet proxy and boolean it out of the pegs we just made, and realizing it's a little too small, it just kind of cuts off the side. I am no engineer, I just play one on TV. I'm a sculptor! Making things work is mostly Audacity based. I'm just very determined. So now that I've inflated that shape and made it really messy and ugly and terrible, select all this nonsense and join it. And then cut out the magnets with the boolean. Now the magnets have some place to go. I'll just clear the mask. Do the part that's super necessary, which is making vision holes. That seems important. And I'm just going to trim out the eyeball holes using the polygon trim. Just validating that trim situation and then dragging it down and making another hole, then giving it the Sleep Token Special, and giving it 3 eye holes. I trimmed it weird on one side, so I'm just gonna force symmetry. Now I need breathing holes, so I'm gonna turn off auto validate on the ellipse, make sure it's a circle, and make it the size that I want. Then just hitting the little green circle and cutting out the holes. Now you don't have to breathe your own air. There's a very specific reason why we trim after we shell it. It's because if you try to shell what you've trimmed, it makes the geometry like super duper weird, and it doesn't calculate it very nicely. So we do this part last. And I'm seeing there's some weird geometry here, so I'm just gonna, looks like the move tool is pretty effective. I'm gonna just tuck those guys in. And also fixing the geometry over here. Sometimes if your smooth tool is not working as intended with stuff like this, make sure you have front-facing vertexes turned off. It's just a back and forth between the move and the smooth tool. And I'm just going to toggle front-facing vertexes back on and smooth out the back of this mask, just so it's a little nicer. The reason why it does it this badly is just because of how sharp the angles are on the outside. I'm just going to voxel remesh this whole thing, a high resolution, keeping sharp edges. Looks like the geometry got a little weird here, so I'm just going to smooth this out real quick. So I'll just decimate this, just so it's not a huge file size, and name it what it is. And it's the front, Helm. And now that I'm thinking about it, I should have put Helm first. But that's fine. And then the back, Helm. And then the wing, Helm. Wing Helm. Your name is Wing Helm. Your name is Wing Helm. And then realize that I'm a dum-dum and it is totally clipping into my neck. So now that I've made this perfectly puzzle piece together thing, I'll have to fix it. Luckily I noticed this before I tried to jam it on my head. I'm just going to try to fix it with the move tool really big. Just going to do my best to line everything back up. And I guess while I'm here, smooth out the transitions here. This is so messy looking, even by my standards, but I'm willing to put up with my own bullshit. The project has to be done. Can't be worried about perfection. But I do need to worry about crazy geometry, so I'm just gonna smooth that out. Perhaps I need to voxel remesh this all together. And, not so smart. I turned it up to like 2,200. This will not process, and if it does, I will eat my hat. Newsflash, it didn't. So I did a lower resolution. I'm just gonna fix this up a little bit, just so the magnet sits in there easily. There, now it will fit my silly little head. Now I can export the selected. So let's slice this bad boy. So I'm just gonna add all 3 pieces. And then I'm gonna select no to make sure it's separate. And then I'm gonna make another plate because this is kind of big, so it will need multiple plates to print. Then I'll move the wings to that plate as well. It should all fit. I'm gonna try to rotate this face so it's not as tall. I'll look at it from the top to make sure it fits. And it doesn't, so I'll have to rotate it forward a little bit. Then I'll move this guy over a little bit and rotate this wing thing. So I'm gonna start repairing everything, starting with the wings. And then I want to add supports to these little pointy bits to ensure success. And I just want to rotate it a little more so those shelves don't need support. And then I'll clone the shape and then mirror it along the x-axis. That's why I only made one. And with this piece, I'll repair the back portion. And I'll rotate it back a little bit. And I can go in and support these little points down here. Now we move on to the face, and I'll repair that as well. And make sure to reinforce the supports where I know it's going to fail. So these little thingy things, definitely. And it might not fail there, but I'm going to put supports on this corner as well. And for good measure, supports along the bottom edge of here. Now for quality, I want to make sure that my seams are aligned. I have it set to lightning infill and making sure that it has 3 wall loops. I don't really mess with the speed, and you want to make sure support is enabled. Tree is my favorite, and I have the brim set to auto. So let's slice it and see how it turns out. And I'm pretty satisfied with it, but the angle of these is a little sketchy. So I want to add a little support to keep them from breaking off while they're printing. I just add a little kickstand. Now it'll be less likely to snap off the build plate. And slicing this helmet, it looks like it is pretty successful. But this top edge has a lot of stair stepping, mostly because it's kind of flat. The best way to combat that is with adaptive variable layer height, and so it changes the height of the layers based on where it is. Now there's a little less stair stepping, but it does add a lot of time to your print. These guys are ready to print. not sure if you guys noticed, but I do film these intros and outros in batches before I make the thing, so I have to assume that it went well. But I really enjoy making these videos for you guys, and I cannot wait to have this armor flesh out more. Like, we started out with the helmet. Next up, probably pauldrons, because those are my favorite things in the world. And then bracers. And then I don't know if I'll make a chest piece. Maybe I'll make something that's like adorns a chest piece thing, but not chest armor, because that'd be a pain in the ass to print, but we'll see. But anyway, if you guys like what you see, like the video. If you have anything to say or anything to add, or just want to randomly say a word to make me giggle, I don't know, leave a comment down below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I have an absolute blast making these videos for you guys, and I'm just gonna keep doing it regardless if they get a ton of views. But you know, it would be really nice if it did. It would be cool if it just blew up, right? But I hope you guys have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.